There have been so many games that were released in 2023 so far, and it can be hard to keep track of them all, let alone play them all. Well, lucky for you, I'm here to help you out. In this video, I'll be sharing 5 JRPGs that were released this year that are worth buying, and 5 that are not. Starting with Fire Emblem Engage. Now, as a huge fan of strategy RPGs, this is one of the best I've played in recent memory. Admittedly, the story is kind of weak in comparison to Three Houses. The storytelling isn't as in-depth, and some of the characters aren't as interesting, but it's great where it counts. It's gameplay. Now, it brings back interesting level designs where positioning actually matters. It's not just about hitting enemies with your strongest troops until the battle is over. You actually have to use strategy and mechanics and position troops with specific abilities in the right spots so you can actually win the battle. And I love the new Engage mechanic where you can pair with characters from past Fire Emblem games to create special abilities. This makes for some really exciting and intense moments in battles, and ones that can turn the tide in an instant if you're losing. And also, because certain characters aren't tied to other ones, you can mix and match in whatever ways you want, so it was really fun trying different combinations. Now, I know a lot of people were hating on Alir's design, but overall, I actually really like this art style. It's very crisp, and for it being on Nintendo Switch, it looked really nice. Now, for those that can't get enough, there's actually been a lot of DLC content released, including extra characters. So if you haven't played this already, I think it's worth buying at full price. It's that good. Now, one game that is definitely not worth buying at full price is Neptunia Sisters vs. Sisters. For people that haven't played this series, it feels like it could be some sort of hidden gem and eventually you want to try it, but trust me on this game is not good. Series fans will probably buy this anyway no matter what I or anyone else says. To me, I feel like the appeal of these games are more about the cute characters than the gameplay. And the gameplay is just... ugh, man, is it bad. Here with Sisters vs. Sisters, it's action combat and it feels so incredibly stiff. And I feel like a lot of it is because of the controls and kind of the janky animations. It feels delayed or that you're just playing it wrong. No matter what I did, I just couldn't get a good feel for this game. Now, if you were to play something top tier like Nier Automata or Tales of Arise and then come back and play this, you'll know exactly what I mean. And the visuals look fine, I guess. They're not going to blow you away, but they're inoffensive. And for me, it only ran at 30 frames per second on PlayStation 5 at launch, but maybe they've patched it in since, but for me, it didn't run very well. I'm telling you, don't be tempted by the cute characters. Trust me, your money will be best spent elsewhere. Like with Atelier Ryza 3. This is the capstone on the Ryza trilogy, and it seems like developer Gust saved the best for last. Ryza 3 builds on the systems refined in previous games, culminating in the most epic adventure yet. For one, zones are much bigger with way more to explore, with the caveat of this weird shallow depth of field that kind of blurs most of the environments. That said, the combat is really dynamic and blazing fast, forcing you to stay on your toes. If you've prepared wisely though, you can blast through these with the proper crafted items and keys. But easily the most important aspect of this game is the story. The Ryza series is all about savoring youth and being adventurous while you still can. This game peppers in so many heartfelt moments that are great payoffs for fans that have been there from the very beginning. This is definitely a game where I'd recommend playing the first 2 games before you jump in here, or you truly won't get the full enjoyment out of it. But if you have played the other entries, then you're in for one of the best JRPGs of the year. Now, I know this one will be contentious, but I really don't think Trinity Trigger is worth buying, and let me tell you why. Most of the game is spent in combat, whether you're moving between areas, crawling through dungeons, or fighting a boss. And it's awful, just awful. This is genuinely one of the worst action combat systems I've played in a while. It sort of feels like it's at odds with itself. At times it feels like it's trying to be like Diablo with its camera perspective and how easily enemies go down. Then you have a stamina bar and one of the worst implementations of an item wheel I've ever seen. It just never feels satisfying to play and oftentimes feels frustrating. Bosses are also just boring attack sponges that feel like they take way too long to kill. It's a shame because the character portrait art and music are actually pretty solid, but even for a discounted price of $50, there's no way I could in good conscience recommend this game. And the same could be said for Matto Anomalies. The premise sounds incredible and it has an alluring art style, but it's just executed so sloppily. The general idea is that you play this detective trying to solve mysteries set in this cyberpunk noir city. The problem comes in with other gameplay elements. You'll be fighting through dungeons with other characters that are frankly boring, not to mention some of the most bare bones turn-based combat you'll ever play. There's no special element, there's not really a weakness system, there's no way to do anything interesting. It's just sort of you attack, they attack, and that's it. And there are also these bizarre mind hack card battles that just make no sense. I tried wrapping my head around them so many different times and I just never could. Half the time I just kind of chose cards at random until I could finish the battles. The developers tried mashing a bunch of gameplay ideas together in an effort to create something unique, but sadly it just doesn't come together in a compelling way. Now, one JRPG that does come together in a compelling way is Legend of Heroes Trails to Azure. This is the concluding chapter of the Crossbell duology and has an absolutely wild story that pretty much gets going as soon as you start the game. The story is one of the best aspects of this game, and to say any more would really spoil it. Suffice to say, if you've played Trails from Zero, you absolutely need to check this game out. It expands the world and concludes it in a very satisfying way. Now, outside of the story itself, it plays very similarly to Trails from Zero, with its strategic turn-based combat system with a party of up to 4 characters. This time, however, you do have new characters that are added to your party, so it adds an extra little flair. What's nice is that a turbo mode is available if you kind of want to speed along with the trash enemies in between bosses, but for those boss battles, you definitely want to turn it off because you really want to implement the best strategy possible. Now, don't let the game's dated visuals fool you. This is easily one of the best JRPGs of the year, and if you're a Legend of Heroes fan, it's an absolute must-play. By the way, if you're enjoying the content, like JRPGs, and want more videos like this, liking the video and subscribing to the channel would mean the world. Strategy RPG Redemption Reapers had a lot of promise coming off the critical darling Ender Lilies. Sadly, this ended up being one of the most frustrating strategy RPGs of recent memory. The idea of a small brigade fighting off an evil legion sounds good on paper, but the character development is paper thin and the story is nearly non-existent. The combat fares much worse, sadly. The difficulty curve is so steep thanks to an unforgiving leveling system and lopsided level design. You'll often be fighting squads 5 times your size, and if even one of your troops falls in battle, you might as well just start over because they'll never catch up level-wise. And there's virtually no strategy to speak of because you basically need to rove around in a small pack if you want any prayer of surviving each battle. It's a shame that such a great soundtrack was wasted on such a subpar game. Now, one game that I did not expect to play but kind of blew me away this year was Like a Dragon Ishin. This is a remake of the 2014 title of the same name that includes new character models, lighting, and much more. It's basically a what-if story taking place in 1860s Japan, using the likeness of characters from the modern Yakuza, or I guess now Like a Dragon games. You'll end up doing a lot of the same activities the series is known for, including fighting, karaoke, and countless other crazy side activities. There were so many things that kept me busy that I would just mess around for hours on end, totally ignoring the main mission. Weirdly enough, one of my favorites being fishing. For me, the visuals and setting of a game can go a long way when it comes to my enjoyment of it, and I personally love Edo-era Japan. I think that aesthetic is just so cool, so I'd be lying if I didn't say that did a lot of heavy lifting. Either way, this is an excellent game worth every penny that you should definitely check out. Now, I really like to use the word lazy when describing games because I used to be a game developer and I know how hard it is to make a game, but the Switch port of Tales of Symphonia Remastered just feels lazy. It feels like they just uploaded the PS3 remaster and called it a day. It doesn't run at a higher frame rate, the visuals don't look any nicer, and there really isn't anything new or noteworthy. It feels like a quick port job to gobble up some extra cash before the end of the fiscal year. I think more interestingly though, I think it exposed Tales of Symphonia as not a very good game. I know it's one of the more beloved entries in the franchise, but personally, I never thought it was very good. I thought the combat was kind of stiff and none of the characters were very interesting. Although I do love that it brought us this hilarious wanted poster as well as the hot and cold meme. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go look it up on YouTube. It's hilarious. That all said, this could have been a great opportunity to refine some mechanics, update the visuals, and add some quality of life improvements. Sadly, Bandai Namco opted to do none of the above. Even if you're a die-hard Tales fan, you really shouldn't bother with this lazy excuse for a port. Your time and money are best used on other games. And lastly, we conclude with what I think is the best JRPG of the year so far, and that is Octopath Traveler 2. In a lot of ways, it's pretty much the same game, but also improved the game dramatically. It retains the same incredible visual style, dynamic turn-based combat system, but also slightly refines both. Now there's a day-night cycle that makes for some gorgeous scenes at night, particularly with lanterns and water. The combat system also adds a new special ability for each character that adds a whole new dynamic twist. I think the biggest improvement though is the writing. Way more of the characters have interesting stories you want to actually see to the very end. They also added more opportunities for characters to actually interact with each other in the story. Personally, my favorites were Throne, Agnia, and Hikari. I just couldn't wait to see how all their stories concluded. I seriously hope they just keep making Octopath Traveler games forever because I can't get enough of them. Now, these are all JRPGs that are out and that we can play right now, but sometimes we have to keep waiting for the better part of a decade to get really great ones. Kind of like the JRPGs in this video right here that we've been waiting way too long for, with one having been announced nearly 7 years ago, and it's not the game you might think it is. And special thanks to Reset Switch, Tyler Kuzawa, and the Miyazaki Man for supporting me over on Patreon. To get exclusive videos and other cool perks, consider supporting me over on patreon.com/thegamingshelf. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.